Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We start today's video with a story about what happens when a neighbor mistakes kindness for a long-term commitment. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. I gave my neighbor one ride. Now he thinks I'm his personal Uber. A few weeks ago, I finally bought a new car. Nothing super fancy, no sports package or custom rims, but it was brand new, and that was a huge deal for me. I'd been saving for a while, and thanks to a lucky $9,000 slot win on stake, I was finally able to pull the trigger. Driving it off the lot felt amazing. That new car smell, combined with the sense of accomplishment, put me in a great mood for days. One morning, not long after, I was heading to work, sipping coffee, enjoying the smooth ride when I saw my neighbor walking down the street. We're friendly enough, polite nods, small talk about the weather, but we're not close. I figured I'd be nice, so I pulled over and asked, "Hey, want a lift?" His face lit up. "Yeah, that'd be great, thanks." We made small talk during the ride and realized we worked fairly close to each other. I dropped him off, he thanked me again, and I went about my day. I thought nothing more of it. Except the next day, there he was, standing in roughly the same spot, glancing up and down the street like he was waiting for a bus. When he saw my car coming, he smiled and stepped forward like it was his stop. I hesitated, but then thought, all right, whatever, and pulled over again. "Thanks, man," he said cheerfully as he climbed in. And then it happened again, and again, and again. Now it's been every single day since that first ride. Rain or shine, Monday through Friday, he's right there waiting for me. No text, no call, no, "Hey, do you mind giving me a ride again?" Just this unspoken expectation that I'll stop and pick him up. At first, I told myself it wasn't a big deal. It was on my way anyway, and he was friendly enough. But after a couple of weeks, it started to wear thin. Some mornings, I just want to blast music, roll the windows down, and enjoy the drive. Sometimes I want to stop for coffee or breakfast without feeling guilty about making someone else late. I even tried leaving early one morning, thinking maybe he'd get the hint that this wasn't a guaranteed daily service. The next day, he got in and laughed. "Guess I must have missed you yesterday," he said. I gave a small, polite smile, but internally, I was groaning. Finally, a few mornings later, I decided to just clear the air. When he got in, I asked, "What do you mean you missed me yesterday?" He looked at me like it was obvious. I thought you were giving me rides to work." That was my opening. "Oh no," I said gently but firmly. "I can't do that every day. I'm sorry if there was some misunderstanding. I was just trying to be nice that first day." He blinked, clearly surprised. "Oh, okay. I just figured, since it's on your way." I shrugged. "Yeah, sometimes it is, but I have my own schedule. Some mornings I leave early or late or stop for coffee. I just can't commit to being your ride every day." There was a beat of awkward silence, but eventually he nodded. Got it. The next morning, he wasn't there. And honestly, I felt a little guilty, but mostly relieved. I never agreed to be his personal chauffeur. I just wanted to be nice once, not sign up for a full-time rideshare arrangement. This is one of those classic be nice once and suddenly you've got a second job situations. Offering him a lift that first day was generous and neighborly, but somewhere along the line, he decided that a single good deed meant free daily rides for life. And our second story. When my mailbox moving became political. So when we bought the house and moved in 3 years ago, we accepted the location of the mailbox. It's on the other side of our driveway and across some uneven ground, about 50 yards away from the door. This wasn't a problem back then, but since that point, we've had a series of bad luck. Wife needed a new knee, I sprained an ankle, and while it's healed enough to walk on and go back to work, anyone who's had one knows it can take a while before it's back to 100%. So it was decided that the mailbox ought to be moved to the end of our path to the street, straight ahead on a flat and smooth surface and only about 30 feet away. We asked the post office what we needed to do to move a mailbox and was told all we needed to do was let the driver know that it's being moved and to just move it, making sure it's numbered to match the house so there's no confusion. Went to the store to buy a new one since the old one was getting a little ratty from getting hit a couple of times and installed it this weekend. Which to our amusement was the best time to install it since we actually caught the driver and were able to tell her that here was the new mailbox and that the other was going away? Great. Situation handled. Installation goes well, and now we're on to part 2, the removal of the other mailbox. Here's where my moving the mailbox got political. The old mailbox was on the same post as my neighbor across the street and one house over, so we shared it. During this past election, I posted no signs supporting either of the candidates. My neighbor, John, not real name, had a half dozen signs, flags, and a banner in his yard in support of a certain candidate. John came over as I was removing the old box and complained that the only reason I was doing this was that I didn't support said candidate, and this was my petty but reason, and that I just didn't want to be associated with him. In truth, I didn't want to be associated with him. Largely before we knew he was a supporter, he wasn't a very pleasant person. Walking my dog, he'd yell at me to keep that GD mutt off my yard, even though I was on my side of the street. He'd also call animal control on me about my chickens running loose across his yard when, in reality, it was his neighbor to his right that had the chickens. I don't have any, although I did buy a used chicken coop since it's also a very nice unit for keeping my wife's Angora rabbits in, so I could see the confusion. We used to wave to him like we'd do for any of our neighbors we'd see outside, and he never waved back, typically just ignoring us and making a point to look at something, anything else other than us. Unless we had the dog, then he'd watch us like a hawk to make sure we didn't come near his lawn. Honestly, we disliked him long before we knew he was a supporter. I explained the medical condition, the walk through uneven ground that I stated above, but that wasn't enough for him. He threatened to call the HOA. We don't have an HOA. We have a neighborhood association that only concerns itself with collecting donations for snow removal and mosquito spraying. I just finished removing the mailbox and went back inside and vowed to ignore him from here on out. What does he think calling would do? What does he even want? Does he want you to keep your mailbox where it is? Is he just whining for the sake of it? And our next story. She thought she owned the street. The county had other plans. I live in a pretty small, quiet neighborhood, maybe 20 homes total. Every house here has wide road frontage, big driveways, and 3-car garages. Parking's allowed on both sides of the street, but because there's so much private space, no one ever really needs to park in front of a home that isn't theirs. Unless you're visiting someone or there's a big event, everyone just uses their own driveway. That's always been the unspoken rule. At least until last month. That's when a woman who lives all the way down at the far end of the neighborhood suddenly decided that my frontage was her personal parking lot. Her little sedan started showing up right in front of my house every day, sometimes overnight. Not in front of her own place. Nope. She'd drive all the way down to mine and leave it right there in the middle of my curb. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe her driveway was being redone. Maybe she was having it sealed or cleaned and didn't want to park on it. Weird, sure, but life happens. But by the 5th night, my patience was running thin. The lawn guys couldn't mow around her car without covering it in clippings. Worse, I had some large deliveries scheduled and the truck drivers couldn't maneuver into my driveway without the extra turning room. That's when I decided to do the polite thing and leave a note. It wasn't rude, just straightforward. Hi, this is usually not a problem, but we've had some large deliveries this week and lawn maintenance. Would you mind parking at your house for a few days? Thanks. I tucked it under her wiper and left it at that. The next morning, the note was gone, but the car was still there. Later that day, my neighbor from across the street texted me, "Hey, OP, heads up. That woman was screaming at me earlier about a note left on her windshield. Said it's a public street and she can park wherever she wants. She's really mad." So much for polite. The next time she moved her car, I parked mine in the space in front of my house. Perfectly legal, perfectly reasonable. But apparently that was a declaration of war. For the next week, she made a big show of flipping off my Ring doorbell whenever she walked past. Sometimes she'd stop just to glare into the camera, give me the finger, and storm off. A couple of times I found Post-it notes on my windshield. F you, snowflake, libtard. Nothing threatening, but all nasty little jabs meant to get under my skin. That's when I decided it wasn't about the parking anymore, it was about the harassment. And if she wanted to play games, fine. I could play too. Didn't take long to notice a pattern at her actual house. Different cars were always in the driveway. Out-of-state plates, people I didn't recognize, coming and going every few days. Out of curiosity, I did a quick search online, and there it was, her house listed on Airbnb. The rate was high, too, easily more than her entire monthly mortgage if she got a few bookings a week. Now, I happen to know that our neighborhood has very strict zoning rules. Short-term rentals are banned outright, no exceptions. So I picked up the phone and called the county zoning office. The zoning commissioner I spoke with practically lit up when I gave him her address. "We've had complaints before," he admitted, "but nothing concrete. Thanks for confirming." Turns out she'd been running that Airbnb scam for almost 5 years, and the penalty? $250 per violation, each time the property was rented out. If you do the math on that over several years, it adds up to a very expensive problem. A few weeks later, I noticed a sheriff's cruiser parked outside her place. Not long after that, she was served with a court order. I don't know exactly how much she got fined, but let's just say it wasn't pocket change. She hasn't parked in front of my house since. Not once. One of my neighbors told me they saw her storming out to her mailbox, ripping open letters with a scowl. "Looks like someone finally found out there are rules for everyone," he joked. She wanted to flip me off, curse at me, and leave me petty notes? Fine. I hope the sound of all those fines piling up drowns out her little tantrums. She thought she was clever, parking where she wanted and making everyone miserable. But in the end, the only person who got stuck with the bill was her. Thank you for your service. We need more people standing up to these kinds of neighborhood tyrants. It was a jerk move to park in front of your house regularly, then to complain about your note, then to flip you off on your Ring camera. But the fact that she was running an illegal STR is the deal breaker. Well done to get that revenge. And our last story. HOA tried to steal land. I've dealt with my fair share of HOA nonsense, but this was a whole new level. I live on a quiet cul-de-sac where every home has a nice front yard and a little bit of green space in between. It's peaceful, which is why I bought here. So imagine my surprise when I got a city permit notice in the mail about construction on my property, a property where I hadn't ordered any work. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I read the paperwork. The HOA had submitted plans for a community storage pad, a fancy term for a slab of concrete, on the small grassy strip between my house and my neighbor's. They'd claimed it was underutilized common area and perfect for community use. Except it wasn't common area, it was mine. My deed clearly shows my property line extends right through that grassy strip. I was stunned. No letter, no heads up, no phone call, just an HOA project, approved, permitted, and ready to start. That would have destroyed my landscaping and turned my yard into a boat parking lot. My first instinct was to storm into the next board meeting and go nuclear, but then I took a deep breath and called my lawyer instead. His response was beautiful. Let them hang themselves. Don't warn them. Don't stop them. Let them get as far into this as possible. Then we pull the plug. So that's exactly what I did. For the next few weeks, I watched everything unfold like a soap opera. Utility crews came out and spray painted my grass with fluorescent markings. I waved to them. I even waved at Karen. Yes, that's her real name. The board member who spearheaded this little project. She stood in my yard grinning like a queen surveying her new kingdom. She had no idea that I was sitting on a signed deed, a survey map, and a very sharp attorney. Then came Saturday morning at 8:30 sharp. The concrete truck rumbled into the cul-de-sac, followed by a crew of workers ready to pour. Half the neighbors came out with coffee to watch the big project. It looked like a block party. I waited until the crew set up their forms and started prepping the mixer. Then my lawyer and I strolled over, calm as can be. "Morning," he said to the foreman. "Before you start, I need to let you know you're standing on private property. My client owns this land, and your client has no legal right to build here." The foreman frowned and turned to Karen. "Excuse me," Karen barked, hands on hips. "This is HOA property. We have a permit." My lawyer pulled out the plat map and pointed. "This is the parcel line. This strip is fully deeded to my client. Your permit's invalid because it was obtained under false pretenses. If you pour one drop of concrete here, you'll be trespassing. We'll file a lien against your equipment before it leaves the property." The foreman blinked. The concrete driver swore under his breath. Karen went from smug to purple in 3 seconds flat. "This is ridiculous. The board approved this. We had a vote." Then the board approved a felony, my lawyer said, still calm. Would you like me to call the police so we can have this conversation on record? The foreman didn't wait for an answer. Shut it down. We're not getting sued over this. Within minutes, the crew was packing up. The concrete truck driver was demanding a cancellation fee on the spot. Karen stood there waving her arms and trying to explain to everyone that this was just a misunderstanding. The damage was done. Not to my property, but to Karen's reputation. Every neighbor on the street saw what happened. They saw Karen try to use HOA power to take private land. They saw my lawyer shut it down. And they saw thousands of dollars of concrete drive away unused. By Monday, the gossip mill was running at full speed. I started getting texts from neighbors thanking me for standing up to the board. One even sent me a picture of the recall petition already circulating with half the neighborhood's signatures on it. The HOA had to eat the contractor's cancellation fee over $6,000 and pay to have the permit revoked. The city slapped them with a warning about submitting false information, and their community storage pad project is now permanently shelved. Karen hasn't so much as looked in my direction since that morning. She resigned from the board 2 weeks later, citing personal stress. I call that a win. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply letting entitled people ruin themselves in front of an audience. It's too much power for home buddies. They start to treat their neighborhoods like their own personal property. Some of the rules and fines that come out of the HOAs are seriously messed up. I'd rather go back to the days of neighborhood watch. That was a practical solution and had a lot less to do with personal preferences. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.